Really quick, everybody, this entire video will be timestamped, so if you don't want to watch only just get straight into a different fight, please check the pinned comment or the red bar right down below you. Again, this entire video will be timestamped, and I'd appreciate you guys watching whatever part you like, and if you're sticking around, guys. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another video. If you are new here, my name is Kyle. I'm your guy with too many YouTube channels, and welcome back to, I guess you could say, early full card breakdown and prediction, this time for UFC Vegas 74. I'm excited for this card. Has some very, very low-key fights on it again. I'm getting ready for it. I'm hyped for it. We're going to give my breakdown and prediction for each. I'd love to know what you guys think about these picks afterwards. With that being said, let's get into the first fight. Timestamps are there if you would like to use them. Starting off with the first fight, and this one's already a little tough to call. We have Maxim Grishin versus Philipe Lins. The reason that I said this one's a little bit tough to call is because both guys have the goal of knocking each other out, and they have no problem going forward, trading blows, okay? But what Philipe Lins does have an advantage of is he has a better all-round MMA game, and that's not to say that Maxim Grishin doesn't. We just have seen Philipe Lins in the past go for some takedowns, so it depends if... I wonder if he's going to come in with that game plan, but I can't be confident that he will, because if he does come in with the idea, hey, I'm going to come in, I'm going to take Maxim Grishin down, he might have some success there. Something else to notice, Philipe Lins is coming down to light heavyweight. Well, he's already been down at light heavyweight, excuse me. It's just he has been a heavyweight before. He's coming down to light heavyweight and has had success so far. So I also like that for him. He's used to fighting bigger and heavier guys, while Maxim Grishin hasn't had that same strength, because Philipe Lins has come down and had that power carry through him. Like I said, he's coming off of a nice win 2 months ago against Ovince St. Preux, but I really don't hold that to anything because St. Preux is just, everybody beats him at this point. But again, at heavyweight, he was doing just not the best, but before that, he was doing okay in the PFL, you know what I mean? So he didn't have success coming into the UFC, seemed to have found himself a light heavyweight and continuing, hopefully, his win streak. Maxim Grishin has had a little bit of a spotty record coming off of an okay decision against William Knight, but before that, and you know what? He's been fighting okay guys, and that's a really, really tough thing. I'm 60-40 on this fight. I'm going to lean towards the side of Philipe Lins just because he has a 2-year advantage here, and something I didn't notice, he has a 2-inch reach advantage also, which isn't too much because they're not really fighters who want to use that reach advantage too much. I like the experience at heavyweight he has had. He will have no problem, it's not like Maxim Grishin's weak or anything, but he'll have no problem grabbing him, and he'll be a little bit stronger. Like I said, he's used to fighting bigger guys, and I feel like that power could also transition over, to the fight with Maxim Grishin. I'm going to pick Philipe Lins, but I'm not so sure about this fight. Moving on to the next fight, guys, I'm excited for this fight because we have Luan Lacerda versus Da'Mon Blackshear. Now, this matchup, the UFC matchmakers knew what they were doing. I've been watching Luan Lacerda in LFA, and he has looked absolutely fantastic. Came over to the UFC. I believe that was his first fight. Yes, it was. Okay, his first loss against Cody Stamann. He looked okay in that fight. He just lost a decision. But the reason why I like Luan Lacerda is because he's very, very fun to watch. He is an amazing grappler who will come forward when he's one of those grapplers with really, really good power too, except it's not the best striking technique. He's a fun fighter. He'll throw hands, knock you down, get it to the ground, try and submit you. Really, really fun to watch. But he's taking on Da'Mon Blackshear. Da'Mon Blackshear also lost his UFC, I guess you could consider it his UFC debut because he came off with a draw and then a tough loss to Farid Basharat. However, Basharat, the two brothers there, I'm so high on those guys that I think they could get into title contention one day, possibly be champions. I see no problem with that loss, and he looked good in that loss. It was a really, really back and forth fight, and he could really hang with Farid Basharat. Yes, he lost a unanimous decision, but I was extremely impressed by his skill set. Da'Mon Blackshear is very athletic with some really, really nice technique behind him. And this is a tough fight because Luan Lacerda, with the way he approaches fights, anything can happen. However, I am still leaning towards the side of Da'Mon Blackshear just because, I've watched Luan Lacerda in LFA. I haven't seen him fight anyone really of significance besides Cody Stamann, but how much do you really want to carry that? Because Cody Stamann is he's a good bantamweight, but it's not great. I'm so high on Basharat, okay? And Da'Mon Blackshear, I love the way he listened to his corner, love the way he came out. He was constantly trying to win that fight the entire time. I like Blackshear. I like what I've seen, and I haven't decided what I'm going to bet on, but I might be placing a bet on Blackshear. Maybe add him to a parlay. I like him in this fight, but the problem is it is risky when you're picking against Lacerda because he does have the power. He has the submissions to be able to take care of anything. However, like I said, against Basharat, I also like Blackshear's defense. I think he'll be the stronger guy in there. I think he'll be more athletic. I think he'll be quicker. Only problem is jiu-jitsu and the problem with the way Lacerda approaches his fights. But I am going to pick Blackshear. I'm kind of like 80-20 on this one. I'm going to pick Da'Mon Blackshear. I like him to win this fight. Next fight, guys, this is going to be a really, really quick breakdown because I don't have too much to say. It's Jinh Yu Frey versus Elise Reed. Both girls who have extremely, extremely spotty records. As you can see, you never really know what's going to happen at those fights because you could have Elise Reed just dominate one fight and then lose the next fight. Kind of the same idea for Jinh Yu Frey because she can take you down and kind of just do her work there because that's her goal. She probably want to wrestle in this fight. Or she can stand up and when she decides to take on a girl like Polyana Viana, just gets absolutely knocked out. You have a decision loss of Vanessa Demopoulos. You can see like there's just way too much going on with these guys and these women, and their skill sets are just okay. You know what I mean? Both fighters will probably want to approach the ground situation in this, but the reason that I'm going to lean towards Elise Reed is because we have a girl that's in her prime versus somebody who's 38 years old. That's pretty much the extent of it. I don't have too much to say about these fighters. Technically, it's probably kind of similar, and I think the odds speak to that. Same with their rankings on Topology here, 32-34. It's a very even fight. Anything could happen. This is one of those fights where you should absolutely not bet on unless you want to throw on an over 1.5 round. Might do that. I might skip this one. I don't know. Again, we'll have a video dropping through exactly what I'm going to be betting on later on next week, but it's for now. I don't know who's gonna win this fight. I'm gonna just side with Elise Reed. Moving on to the next fight, we have Daniel Santos versus Johnny Munoz Jr. Now, I have a little bit of a problem with this one because I'm all over Daniel Santos. I think he is the better fighter everywhere aside for possibly the wrestling that Johnny Munoz can bring into the fight. But then again, you have Daniel Santos, who has very, very good BJJ, excuse me. So it's I think Daniel Santos is better everywhere. I would pick him to win, but the problem is this fight is rebooked and Daniel Santos pulled out. How long ago was that? I don't know. They were supposed to fight like a few weeks ago or something like that. And Daniel Santos had a leg injury or something wrong with his leg. There was an abscess on his leg or something along the lines of that. Something was wrong with Daniel Santos' leg, and there were rumors going around. I haven't seen anything officially posted, so keep that in mind while we're talking about this. All we know for sure is there was something wrong with his leg. He was injured. He had to pull out. That's making me worry a little bit, but if he's taking the fight, I would imagine that he's okay and ready to the fight. But then again, that could get in the way of his training. Who knows if he'll be in there not warmed up? You know what I mean? So there's that to consider, but other than that, I would just pick Daniel Santos to win this fight. Again, like I said, I think he's better everywhere, and so far, he's only had one hiccup, but I love the fight he was coming off of. But he's looked good, man. He's looked good, and you can see Johnny Munoz Jr. coming into the UFC had a very spotty record. I don't really consider his opponents that great. They could become something, but there's no notable losses where I'm like, hey, you know what? No shame in losing to that guy. You know what I mean? So I like Daniel Santos in this fight. You just got to take into consideration, like I said, what happened to his leg. Moving on to the next fight, we have the return of Andrei Arlovski taking on Don'Tale Mayes. Now, when's the last time Andrei Arlovski fight? It was only 6 months ago. Okay, so I have no clue who's going to win this fight. Problem is, you have Andrei Arlovski, who is 44 years old now, and I have had a rule for so long on the channel where it's like, I'm done picking people over 40 years old. They're just different fighters. However, Andrei Arlovski, while he's not the same guy that he was when he was young, as you could see, he's been winning. He's been winning, and not only has he been winning, he's been looking pretty good. He's been defying age, and again, he's been looking old, but if you've watched Andrei Arlovski's fights, you would know he's been looking older, not the same killer that he once was, but still good fighter, good technique. Now, the biggest thing was, especially for his past fights, it's like, okay, he's 44 years old now, taking a ton of damage. How long is it until we see his chin go? And in that last fight, we did see his chin go against Marcos Rogério de Lima, who's a good fighter in himself 6 months ago, and he did lose by choke, but he did get cracked before that and was essentially knocked out. So we finally did see the chin go on Andrei Arlovski. The problem is that the point where it's, okay, Andrei Arlovski doesn't have a chin anymore? That's the big question. It's a really, really big question. Plus, there's going to be one of these fights where Arlovski shows up because he's 44 years old. One of these days, we're going to see him show up and just look horrible. Okay? It happens with every fighter. That day is coming. Will the day be today? Or, 2 weeks from now. He's taking on Don'Tale Mayes. Don'Tale Mayes, I thought, was okay. He was an okay fighter. Nothing's really special. He doesn't really have a ton of technique behind him, but he has huge, huge, huge power. Problem is, His last fight, I was so confident he was going to win against Augusto Sakai because Sakai, and all this, I mean, absolutely no disrespect, but I think Augusto Sakai is not good. Like, I thought it was just, okay, you're fighting Sakai, that's a win. You got to win right there. That was one of the worst performances I have ever seen in a fighter. For a heavyweight with power to his extent in his prime, I am so, like, distasted by that performance. I want to pick Andrei Arlovski. If he comes in and looks a fraction of what we saw against Augusto Sakai, and that was only 2 months ago, Arlovski's going to pick him apart. Arlovski's better everywhere besides the power. It's just 44 years old, chin might have gone. But will Dontel Mays even come in because he didn't throw any punches in the last fight? Is that going to happen again? I don't know. And the other thing is, if you follow MMA, you would know, like, there's a meme going around when the heavyweights where it's, okay, you have the Andrei Arlovski test. If you pass it, then you are truly into the UFC. You can truly have the potential to break into the top 15, and whether or not you pass that test is, of course, up to you. This is the test for Dontel Mays. Man, if this was literally any other heavyweight, I would pick against Andrei Arlovski because, again, I question his chin at this point. When's he going to show up and not look good at 44 years old? But I'm just so, like, put off by that last performance by Dontel Mays. I'm leaning towards Andrei Arlovski. This is certainly a fight to stay far, far away from in the betting lines. Stay away. But if you got a gun to my head, I'd pick Andrei Arlovski, even though I'm not. Anything could happen. Moving on to the next fight, we have John Castaneda versus Mateus Mendonca. Okay, so both these fighters are pretty good everywhere. Of course, I would say they both have. Of course, Mateus wants to take it to the ground and do some work there, but John can really fight anywhere too. The problem is, I believe when looking into this fight and when these guys will really match up, I feel like Mateus will be able to get him to the ground, because if you take a look at his last loss, it was against Javid Bashrat. No, was that his first loss? Okay, yes, it was after the Contender Series. I had to remember there. Again, very high on the Bashrat brothers. I think a loss to Javid is nothing to be ashamed of. Absolutely nothing. And if he fought Javid Bashrat, and was it a split decision? Oh, it was a unanimous decision. Okay, I remember it being a really close fight. He was able to do a little bit work of his ground game against Bashrat. I know that MMA math doesn't work that well, but John gets taken down a fair amount. You know what I mean? He's had a little bit of a spotty record in the UFC, as we could see. He's coming off of a loss against Daniel Santos, but he looked okay there even before that loss. I don't like how susceptible John is to being taken down. While he can fight off of his back very well, if Mateus and I liked what I've seen against Javid Bashrat, and even before that in the Contender Series, I'm leaning towards him. He's a little bit more dangerous, but then again, there's a lot of close fights on this card. There's a lot of close fights. I'm leaning towards Mendonca to win this fight. I'm kind of 70-30 on this one, but I am going to pick Mateus to win. Moving on to the next fight. Now, guys, this is going to be either a really fun fight or a really boring fight. We have Elizeu Zalesky versus Abubakar Nurmagomedov, there. So, when taking a look at this fight, you know the Nurmagomedov game plan. It's typical, right? Go in there, get a takedown. He's looked okay so far doing it, but he doesn't seem to be as dangerous as you would expect from somebody with Habib's last name. And I don't mean to compare the two, but that's what people do when they see the last name. Zalesky, as you can see, a little bit of a spotty record, 36-year-old, so he's getting up there, but he hasn't shown signs of aging yet. Coming off of a very nice win, but problem, 1 year, 6 months ago, I'm a big, big believer in ring rust. I think that's a very real thing, and I think that especially at coming in at 36 years old, that might be an issue. Something to keep in mind. Abubakar Nurmagomedov, 2 really nice wins, okay? But the first one is a return, and he looked okay 6 months ago. 33 years old, just exiting his prime now. I'm going to pick Nurmagomedov to win this fight, but the problem is Zalesky, and the reason why I mentioned that this fight could be potentially very fun is because Zalesky has a very fun style. He has no problem throwing anything at all at you, whether it's a knee, flying knee, elbows, punches, you know what I mean? He'll do anything with you. However, we have seen him taken down and beaten up in his fights, and that's exactly what Abubakar is going to attempt to do. I feel like he'll be successful in that. Unless he gets caught with something huge coming in, I don't see it as a problem. I got Nurmagomedov in this one, and I'm fairly confident in saying so. Moving on to the next fight, we have Guram Kutateladze versus Jamie Mullarkey. Now, Guram, is somebody that I've been very high on, and long story short, I'm going to be picking him to win this fight. He's coming off a loss against Damir Ismagulov, and Damir, take a look at Damir's record, speaks for itself if you don't know the fighter, but Damir Ismagulov is so amazing. One of the reasons why I'm so sad that he's retiring is because I could see him being a champion one day. Before that, split decision, but a win over Mateusz Gamrot. 2 fights coming into the UFC and has looked absolutely fantastic. Fantastic. I am so high on this dude. I'm picking him to win. Jamie Mullarkey, and you know what? Jamie Mullarkey's no joke. He's a good fighter, good everywhere, very, very well-rounded. Coming off of 2 great wins, too. You know what? But the opponents that he fought are not nearly as good as what Guram has taken on. Guram, it just appears to be so dangerous and so solid everywhere. I think that he's just going to do what he wants against Jamie Mullarkey. If Jamie Mullarkey wants to take him down, I think he's going to get stuffed. If you can stuff Gamrot's takedowns, you'll be able to stuff Mullarkey's takedowns. And I understand that's getting a little bit into MMA math, and MMA math doesn't always work. But I can't not pick Kutateladze in this one. I'm so high on this dude. I cannot wait to see him perform. I'm picking him to win. Guram is one of my most confident picks on the card. So far, my hugely confident picks are Guram and Da'Mon Blackshear. Again, I don't know if I want to bet on him at minus 300 right now, though. I'll have to look a little bit more into it. Again, I will be putting out a betting video next week. We've been doing very well, so stay tuned for that. Moving on to the next fight, we have Karine Silva versus Ketlen Souza. Now, I got to be honest with you guys, okay? Typically, I am familiar with fighters outside the UFC. I like watching other organizations, and I just keep up. You know what I mean? However, I want to be completely honest with you, because in case you guys are going off the same picks as me, I have not seen Ketlen Souza fight. Only highlights. I know of her, and I know she's very well-rounded, and it looks like there is a lot of hype on her coming in. However, again, like I said, I just want to be honest with you guys, okay? But however, I have seen Karine Silva, 2 fights in the UFC, and it looks like it's going to be one of those women's fighters who, it's just, there's so much technique behind it. She'll take you down, do her work, and she's actually has wonderful, wonderful technique, and that is huge for the flyweight division because you don't see that a lot. I can't make an educated pick on this fight because, again, I'm not familiar with Souza. I'm just not. But I have to pick Silva. The UFC experience, and from what I've seen, she looks extremely dangerous. But Souza, I understand there is a lot of hype on this girl. But again, I just want to be honest with you guys. I'm not too familiar with Souza. Moving on to the next fight, we have the always exciting Tim Elliott taking on Victor Altamirano, who has had a very quick turnaround. We just watched him fight, yes, 1 month ago. 1 month ago, very quick turnaround, and I do like seeing that for fighters. Tim Elliott has been a little while, though. 1 year and 2 months. Okay, you can start to get into the ring rust talk if you want. Now, this is a fight. This is a tough fight to pick. Tim Elliott is a wild card. You know, he wins some fights, loses some fights. Fight's very wild. He wants to take it to the ground, want to do some scrambles there. He'll have no problem throwing up submissions or overcommitting to some ground and pound and then lose his position. Same with on the feet. He has no problem throwing his hands and just brawling on. Sometimes we'll see him fight technical. That's why it's tough to pick a Tim Elliott fight. He has no problem throwing himself into a fight. Victor Altamirano, though, has looked very good from what we have seen. His only loss is to Carlos Hernandez with a split decision. He came off the Contender Series, was an LFA, and I have seen him fight in LFA, I believe. How long ago was that? 2 years ago in LFA, eh? It's a little bit spotty, my memory on his LFA, because I love watching LFA, so I must have... yeah, he's ringing a bell, man. But maybe it's just because I've been watching him in the UFC. Guys, I'm sorry. I'm just thinking off the top of my head here. So, Tim Elliott, though. The problem is, it's tough to pick a Tim Elliott fight. You could put anybody in front of him, and Tim Elliott could win, or Tim Elliott could lose. It's kind of like the Michael Johnson effect, but... of course, not as extreme. Tim Elliott's getting up there, though. 36 years old. How have his last losses been? You know, he's still been fighting really good guys, but his losses are to the top contenders, but then he's been beating the fighters who aren't exactly at the top yet. Assuming that the ring rust isn't there, I'm going to pick Tim Elliott. Not confidently, but I'm going to pick Tim Elliott because, again, like when I just took a look at his record here, he's been fighting and winning against guys who haven't been at the top of the division yet. And Victor Altamirano is not there yet. However, Victor has been incredibly active and looks like he's improving every single time that we see him. He could very well do what he does best and take a win here. If he does get a win, I would imagine it's going to be by decision. But I'm going to lean towards Tim Elliott. I'm not sure about this fight, though. Man, this fight has a lot of close fights on it. Or this card has a lot of close fights on it. Good fight, this one. I can't wait to see. Let me know what your picks are down below. Moving on to the next fight, we have Jim Miller versus Jared Gordon. Now, this is an interesting fight. Jared Gordon, we just did see a few weeks ago against Bobby Green. They clashed heads. He got knocked out. Nothing to really talk about there. Of course, you could always have a problem with that moving forward, but I don't know. Before that, he had the win against Paddy Pimblett. You know what I mean? It's a loss, but it's a win. So you could argue, ignoring this fight, you could argue that he's on a 2-fight win streak. Jim Miller has had a career resurgence. 39 years old. His age is clearly showing, and I do believe it showed more in his last fight against Alexander Hernandez. He looked absolutely horrible in that fight, and Jim Miller, I'll be cheer for him in this fight. He's one of my favorite fighters of all time. I loved watching Jim Miller growing up. One of the reasons that I've been involved in MMA. He is an inspiration to me, okay? Jim Miller, I'm going to be cheering for him. Problem is, his last fight, he just looked real bad. Really bad. Jared Gordon, though, is one of those fighters where I'm not just overly impressed with him. And I'm not going to lie to you guys, I'm leaning towards Jim Miller in this fight because Jared Gordon, he's just okay everywhere. And Jim Miller, at this point in his career, I believe he is okay everywhere as well. If this would have been before, I would have said, hey, great grappling, great striking. He's a really good all-around fighter, Jim Miller. But with his age, I feel like the playing field is a little bit leveled out. Jim Miller, his past few wins have been against fighters who are not necessarily at the top. I understand you could say that about Donald Cerrone, but at that point, Donald Cerrone was nowhere near the top. Assuming that he doesn't look slow and horrible like he did against Alexander Hernandez, I would pick him to beat Jared Gordon just a little bit. Just be like half a step ahead the entire time. You know what I mean? Jared Gordon, again, very spotty. Again, I've never been really impressed with Jared Gordon. I mean, absolutely no disrespect, okay? I'm leaning towards Jim Miller to win this fight. Tough fight. 55-45, Jim Miller. That's my official prediction. I might be, one of the bets that I'm thinking about placing, though, to be honest with you, is, oh my god, and I completely forgot to mention, Jim Miller took this fight on short notice. I forgot to mention that completely. Who knows what kind of shape he's in, but Jim Miller seems like one of those guys where I won't really bug him too much. That's something to take into consideration. One of the fights or bets that I'm considering making is over a round and a half on this fight because you don't see a ton of finishes unless it's the Jim Miller side and having a submission. But I don't know. Jared Gordon might be able to fend that off for a couple rounds if he gets submitted at all. It's a bet that I'm thinking about placing, but right now I'm like 55-45 on the side of Jim Miller in this matchup. Moving on to the next fight, we have Alex Caceres versus Daniel Pineda. Now, Alex Caceres is somebody that I have been really paying attention to because he's been always one of those guys where it's win, lose, win, lose, win, lose. Nothing special about him, you know what I mean? But all of a sudden, since what? I don't know. It was probably like around 2020, right? 2 years ago, somewhere around then, he has been on a win streak, looking well improved, getting finishes. I've been really high on Alex Caceres, and I really hope that he continues winning and makes it to the top. So that's my story with Alex Caceres, not that you needed to hear it. Really enjoy watching him fight. Had one hiccup there against Sadiq Youssef, but then came back and knocked out Julian Erosa. Looked great, even though Julian Erosa is a little bit chinny. And something to note is the fighters that Alex Caceres has been taking on is, you know what, it's okay. But at the end of the day, he's been looking better and better every single time we see him, aside from one hiccup here. 34 years old and still improving. Daniel Pineda, 37 years old and not improving. The game plan is always simple with Daniel Pineda. Go in, throw wild, try to knock you out. Whether or not he's going to do that, sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. Daniel Pineda also has a huge gas tank issue. He's dangerous for a couple minutes, and that's it. And the reason that I'm going to pick, spoiler alert, Alex Caceres is my pick for this fight, and the reason for that is he's always improving. He's been looking significantly better aside from that one fight for a few years now. I'm very high on the dude. I don't know about when he breaks into the top 15, but I think he will take on Daniel Pineda, no problem. Daniel Pineda is extremely dangerous at the beginning of the fight. I feel like Alex Caceres, as far as I know, he's never been finished. It could be wrong about that. Take that with a grain of salt, but he's never been finished in a very long time if he has. Alex Caceres will be able to weather the early onslaught that Daniel Pineda will come in with and even maybe catch him with a counter shot. Alex Caceres is very wonky with his striking, and I'm very confident that he'll win this fight. I'm picking him over Daniel Pineda. I don't like the gas tank. I don't like the swing and wild. Alex Caceres has a style where I can see Daniel Pineda just running into something and possibly getting knocked out himself. Plus, it's been a while since we have seen him fight, hasn't it? Yeah. Oh, 1 month ago. I forgot about that. I was thinking the 1 year ago fight against Andre Fili. My apologies. Still. Okay? Still, I'm all over Alex Caceres on this fight. Has it been Alex Caceres 5 months ago? Yeah, that doesn't really change anything. I forgot about this fight for some reason against Tucker Lutz, but still, you know what? He won that fight, but the game plan is always the same with Daniel Pineda, and he is not improving the same rate Alex Caceres is. I like Alex Caceres to win this fight. All over him. Very confident. Moving on to the main event of the evening, and it's a 50-50 fight. Kai Kara France versus Amir Albazi. Now, Kai Kara France, I was very high on. I love the win streak that he got put on. He looked very, very good, and I was very high on him, especially after the win against Askar Askarov. Loved what he did there, loved his performance, loved everything, and I was picking him against Brandon Moreno. I was wrong on that, and he didn't look so, he had his moments, but still, Brandon Moreno did what Brandon Moreno did, and I ended up finishing him. Amir Albazi, however, 16-1, entering his prime. Man, does this guy look good. This guy has been looking fantastic. He can fight everywhere, but he's very, very good. Sneaky on the ground, has great takedowns, and the question is, will he be able to get the fight to the ground? Kara-France has pretty good takedown defense. Could catch him with an uppercut moving in. If Kara-France is able to keep this fight standing, I do give him an advantage, especially, I don't know about the power, because Amir Albazi has been looking pretty good. He's just coming off of a KO win. This fight again, man, a lot of close fights on this card. It's a 50-50 fight to me. Coin flip fight. I'm staying far away from this on the betting side unless I want to get into round betting, maybe have it go over a round and a half, something like that. Oh, man. Kara-France no longer has momentum. Amir Albazi does have the momentum coming into this fight. Number 4 taking on number 8. Again, very, very tough fight to call. If you had a gun to my head, I would go Albazi. But both fighters are just so good everywhere, and both fighters seem to be improving every single time that we see them. Both fighters are great. Amir Albazi does have a little bit of a weird striking style where I can see him evading the power of Kara-France, but then again, I can see Kara-France clipping Amir Albazi as he wants to get closer. Very, very tough fight to pick. Coin flip fight, and I'd love to know what you guys think down below about this. But again, you had a gun to my head, I'd pick Albazi in this one. Not sure at all. But guys, that is going to be my full card picks for this fight. Let me know what you think. If you have time, write down your entire full card predictions because I would love to read about it. I'd love to talk to you about it, especially for things that I wasn't sure of because there were a lot of fights that I didn't have a clue what was going to happen. Let me know what you think down below about them. I'd love to see you there. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. On the screen right now, you will have 2 fantastic combat videos. If you want to keep watching the channel, videos will be right here for you. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I will see you there. Take care.